Bell lived his days with confused memories, always tormented by dreams that, although they aroused strong emotions, were full of unfamiliar faces. One morning, he decided to share these concerns with his grandfather during breakfast. The old man just smiled at the boy, but inside his heart ached. Bell's grandfather continued to read him stories of heroes who ventured inside and outside Ororio. The young Bell, fascinated, listened with shining eyes, wishing to be like those heroes who saved people and changed the world. Day after day, Bell's grandfather noticed this feeling growing in his grandson's heart, until, at a decisive moment, he made a decision. With deep affection and veiled sadness, he stroked Bell's head, who fell asleep in his lap. As silent tears streamed down his grandfather's face, he made a promise to himself, "Bell, you will become a hero. To do so, you must know pain. Survive, my grandson, and save this world. I will always be watching your great deeds, even from afar." The next morning, a villager approached Bell's house, looking sad. He knocked on the door and the sleepy boy answered, saying good morning, recognizing him as an acquaintance of his grandfather. The man, in a cold but compassionate tone, told Bell that his grandfather had passed away. He had been attacked by a group of monsters and, unfortunately, he did not survive. "They took your grandfather's body, Bell." "I am sorry," the man added, before walking away, leaving the boy completely alone. Bell was only 14 years old. The news hit him like a brutal blow, leaving him speechless. He stood there, motionless, unable to shed a tear. The shock was so great that it seemed as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. For hours, Bell remained sitting on the sofa in the living room, exactly where he had received the most painful news of his life. As night began to fall, he finally felt hungry and got up to go to the kitchen. It was then that he realized that his face was wet. The tears he had not been able to cry before finally flowed, and reality hit him with full force. An intense pain took hold of his chest, a pain so deep that it seemed like it would burst. He cried and cried until his tears dried up. And when they did, Bell wondered what he would do now. Desperate for answers, he went to his grandfather's room, where he found a bag hidden under the bed. Inside it were some books, the same ones his grandfather always read to him, with stories of heroes who had emerged in Ororio. Next to the books, there was a bag full of coins. Bell could not fully understand what was happening, but at that moment, he knew one thing: he was determined to follow the path his grandfather had laid out for him. Driven by the desire to honor a promise that weighed heavily on his heart but that he did not yet fully understand, Bell made a decision: "I will go to Ororio. I will become an adventurer and a hero." With renewed determination, Bell began to gather his clothes and most valuable belongings. He locked up the humble house that had housed so many good times with his grandfather and set off for Ororio, traveling with a group of merchants from the village. The journey took about 2 days, during which Bell contributed to the expenses. When he finally reached the gates of Ororio, Bell was amazed. The city walls were imposing, and the tower rose so high that it seemed to touch the sky, just as he had read in the books. His eyes shone with excitement, and every step he took towards the city increased his euphoria. Upon entering the famous labyrinth city, Bell was completely fascinated. His first task was to find a cheap place to stay. He did the math and discovered that with the money he had, he could sustain himself for 7 days, paying for the hotel and food. Bell never forgot to thank his grandfather for leaving those coins for him. Every day, he walked through the city of Ororio from north to south, east to west, looking for a family that would be interested in recruiting him. But at the end of each day, he returned to the inn with a face marked by disappointment. Being human and looking like a country boy made him face discrimination. As a shy boy, he found it difficult to show his true potential, even though he was trained by one of the strongest adventurers in Ororio, something he didn't even know for sure. When Bell was about to give up hope, fearing that he would be forced to sleep on the streets of Ororio and go without food, he decided to fill his spirit with confidence and fight for another day. Deep down in his heart, he felt that this day would be special. Today, he would become a real adventurer and, who knows, he would meet a beautiful young woman like his grandfather had always wanted for him. In the adventurer's square, Bell took a break to eat his usual bread. The streets were crowded, as always, and he let himself get lost in the routine. But suddenly, he felt an intense and intimidating gaze focused on him. Confused, Bell tried to find the source of that feeling. The hustle and bustle of the streets made everything chaotic, and it seemed impossible to identify where the gaze that was following him was coming from. Until, a little ahead, he noticed someone standing, watching him. It was a hooded figure, apparently a woman, although Bell wasn't entirely sure due to the cloak that covered her from head to toe. When their eyes met, Bell froze, feeling the blood drain from his face. The mysterious person began to slowly approach, closer and closer, while Bell's heart beat faster. He was nervous, his hands were sweating, and he couldn't look away. As he got closer, Bell could get a better look at the person's face. It was a woman, of stunning beauty, with eyes that seemed to shine in a unique way. The moment her eyes met his, he felt a strange familiarity, as if that presence reminded him of his grandfather, although he couldn't explain why. As he got closer, Bell could get a better look at the person's face. It was a woman of stunning beauty, with eyes that seemed to shine in a unique way. The moment her eyes met his, he felt a strange familiarity, as if her presence reminded him of his grandfather, although he couldn't explain why. Now, the woman was less than 2 meters away, and Bell felt his mind collapse. He could barely think of anything other than her piercing gaze. The closer he got, the more she left him speechless. When they were finally face to face, the woman asked Bell to accompany her to a quieter place. Not knowing what to do, Bell just nodded and followed her down a less busy and darkened street. The atmosphere around him seemed to change, becoming denser and more mysterious. The woman then removed the hood that covered her face, revealing long silver hair that shone in the dim light, deep silver eyes, and skin as white as snow. Bell was completely paralyzed, unable to look away. She was simply perfect, a sight that left him even more confused. The eyes that he had thought were purple from a distance now revealed their true color, silver, like the purest metal. Bell, shy as he was, began to blush violently. The woman, noticing his reaction, laughed gracefully, bringing her hand to her mouth with unparalleled class. She calmed down a little and then, with a gentle smile, said to Bell, "You are different. Your interior is beautiful, it has a color I have never seen before. You are pure, and I want you for myself." These words made Bell almost have a nervous breakdown. He had no idea what she was talking about. The only thing going through his mind was to escape from that situation as quickly as possible. But before he could act, the woman noticed his growing panic and, extending one of her hands, summoned an imposing presence. Suddenly, a gigantic creature appeared behind Bell, making him tremble from head to toe. The woman approached Bell and introduced herself with an enigmatic smile. "My name is Freya, the goddess of the strongest family in Orario, and I want you in my familia." At that moment, time seemed to stop for Bell. His shyness gave way to absolute surprise. His face, once flushed, lost all color, but his eyes began to fill with tears. He had spent days walking the streets of Orario, desperate to join any familia, and now, an unexpected turn of events had happened. It was too good to be true. How could the goddess of the most powerful familia in the city, someone so influential, invite him for no apparent reason? Bell stopped questioning the details, he didn't want to care about it. His childish heart couldn't contain its emotion. If what that beautiful woman was saying was true, then he was taking the first real step towards realizing his dream. Unable to hold back his tears, Bell burst into tears. Freya, in turn, was happy to see the pure glow emanating from the boy's soul. Earlier that day, Freya had gone for a walk through Orario, escorted from afar by her strongest son, Otter. She wanted to walk around without being recognized as the most beautiful and powerful goddess in the city, so she wore a cloak that covered her from head to toe. Her goal was simple: to observe up close how people lived their lives, something that fascinated her. Freya had a unique power in her eyes, which allowed her to see into people's souls. When she saw Bel, she could not resist the sweetness, purity and transparency of his soul. She had to have him for herself. While Freya and Bel were in this unique moment, between the goddess and her possible son, Otter, who was watching from afar, noticed an unwanted approach. Alan, one of the members of the Freya family, was known for being grumpy and impetuous. He appeared, irritated, interrupting the meeting. "You are not worthy of being in the presence of my dear and beloved goddess Freya," he exclaimed, looking at Bel with contempt. Freya, who had softened at Bel's sweetness, now showed a sharp smile. "Alan, please calm down. This is the newest member of our familia." The goddess's words surprised Alan, who looked Bel up and down in confusion. Although he did not understand Freya's decision, he respected it unconditionally. Without question, he ordered Bel to stand up and adjust his posture before the goddess. Still stunned, Bel stood up, only to see Alan move with unbelievable speed, demonstrating the strength of a first-class adventurer. Bel, in that instant, had a glimpse of how powerful the familia he was about to join was. Freya extended her hand to Bel, inviting him to follow her to his new home. With tears of gratitude in his eyes, Bel thanked the goddess. Alan, on the other hand, scolded him, ordering him to stop crying and act like a man. When they finally arrived at the Freya familia residence, Bel was speechless. The mansion was immense, shining, completely different from anything he had ever seen. It was impressive. Upon entering through the main gate, Bel was met with a disturbing sight. Members of the familia were engaged in a frantic fight, seemingly fighting to the death. Bel's heart raced, and he began to worry about what kind of familia he was entering. After all, he had been rejected by several other familias and did not have the luxury of being picky. However, the sight before him left him uncertain about what was to come. Noticing the tension on his face, Freya explained, "This is the training our familia undergoes. It is thanks to this that we are the strongest in Orario." Surprised, Bel began to believe the goddess's words. He was finally understanding how powerful and feared the Freya familia was, and what it meant to be a part of it.